Hi, I'm Andy Bache with Adventure Surf Ministries. We're in the middle of the Good Giving Challenge, and we're in the shack, day 4, and I'm sharing the shack this morning with a longtime friend, Mark Troyer. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do, Mark?
I'm Mark Troyer. I'm Andy Bache's lackey. Whatever he tells me to do, I should show up.
Right.
So this is the place. I'm work at Asbury University. Been there. This is my 30th year. He and I connected about 20 years ago, and currently I'm the vice president for advancement and strategic partnerships.
Yeah, some history here. We worked together for a decade in student development at Asbury, and so he was my boss there. And something about that being someone's supervisor that he taught me so well is that Mark was one of those people that could have done. I really felt like he could have done every level of my job. Yet he was wise enough to not do it, to instead allow me to, as opposed to, those folks that could finish your sentence, but they honor you enough to not do it, But, when I asked to jump in, he'd be able to. Speaking of our history, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about your connections with Adventure Surf?
Yeah. So great organization. Adventure Serve is one of those places that we've been plugged in with since you took over and brought it to Wilmore. My daughter actually worked for Adventure Serve, Lisa, for 5 years, I think, from while she was in college to after college.
She did 2 different internships, one through recreation, one through social work.
It was just a great experience. And we owe our son-in-law to Adventure Serve.
Yes.
Lisa met Oliver and just love him, and they just both have the heart that Adventure Serve is about. That's the kind of people they are. So we have been connected with you guys for a long time and have loved what you've done, have been a part of that, and had your staff over to the house. And
yes, you and Diane, your wife, are so good at just opening your house to so many folks, and that you'd invite us over. And
good mission fit. I mean, we love having an organization like Adventure Serve in town that we can funnel students to and work at and be a part of. So great. Yeah. You haven't made us sleep in a shack yet, but this is a good start.
Yeah. Well, Mark, while you are currently in a development role, correct, at Asbury University, over those 20 years, you've done just about every role, from teaching. You've taught courses. You've ran so many kinds of just direct service or direct student roles. You've trained RAs. You've trained so many levels of student development. You've also gone and presented at tons of student development conferences and collegiate conferences around higher education. Maybe just tell us a little bit about how higher education intersects with these issues of homelessness and substandard housing.
Great question. I haven't done every job at Asbury. One of these times I'll get one right and they'll let me keep the one I have. But one of the things that we hope happens, especially at a Christian college where we're trying to instill not just education but character, and having students graduate thinking other than themselves to serve others, is that it gives you a chance to do experiential education and get people out there. So one of the things that we hope happens is that you are exposing students to substandard housing and getting them to think about, as I go out and graduate and I'm in communities, how can I leave it better than I found it where I am, whether it's through my family and what we do, or the church, or the position that I may get, whether it's in missions or in business. And so some of the intersects for us are not only making a difference while we're here. So some of those times where we were early on in student development, when I was in that spot, we took RAs and we helped the local community at the community service center and distributed food and all those kind of hands-on things, as well as teaching the theory and the skills that people will need from a leadership perspective. So we hope it's an experimental and experiential education, whether you're coming at it from a social work or ministry or business.
Talk a little bit more about this experiential education and what we talked about when we worked together as service learning. You were very intentional about making orientation the first thing that freshmen did at Asbury was a service project within their first 5 days of being at Asbury. And you also created this extracurricular expectation, or like connecting the dots between all the things that students were doing at Asbury University that had leadership components, and you included service in that, and people could kind of gather up these credits of extracurricular activities that in many ways define leadership according to how you understood it.
Well, I mean, part of what we hope happens, and part of our theology and how we come at education, is from a Wesleyan perspective that talks about head, heart, and hands. So it's good education. That's the head part. The heart part is the spiritual walk and the character, but it's also the hands part. And so good education is actually doing that, learning the frustration of working with volunteers, or learning the frustration of, hey, we got our whole hall together and oops, somebody forgot about transportation, or the things that you guys are dealing with at Adventure Serve every day when you're going to go serve. And some of the details are really important, and someone's got to learn the skills of what happens when the car breaks down, or when volunteers don't show up, or when we don't have enough resources. How are we creative with that? That's all part of the educational component. So as we try to have students plug into their own leadership development, a pretty important piece of that is getting involved. So whether it's, we got a soccer team right now that is serving the inner city, downtown, working with kids that are some of them are in substandard housing, and dealing with what happens when, mom doesn't let them show up because they're getting evicted. They're just the guts of what it takes to help other people, and the challenge of that. We hope we're exposing students to that, whether it's through their athletic teams or a class or co-curricular activities. That's part of who we are. We ought to be doing that as part of good education, really, and our theology.
One of the things you said reminded me of how, our beginnings was through the ropes course at Asbury that you planted. You were able to get the dollars to build it because you saw this connects with leadership development. And the way that it
You are really going way back now.
Yeah.
That was like 30 years ago.
97 or 96, who knows. But it's the leadership development happened with this group coming to this set of cables and together trying to figure out, okay, how do we get from here to there? And that process is what developed leadership. In the same way, you just talked about how, okay, a floor of guys sees a need in the community, and so those floor of guys need to do similar habits and practices of working together in order to accomplish that task. And that, I think, speaks very well to what Adventure Serve Ministries does on our trips regularly. We hand it over to our teams and say, hey, here's your problem. Here's some tools and some ideas of how to solve that problem, but you guys together need to figure this out, so that leadership development naturally happens in the service.
Well, and you're doing that intentionally, and sometimes it's messy because you have people who you're taking in who don't have that experience, but part of that is the developing that experience in leadership, and that's as equally important, so that when Lisa Troyer 5 years later leaves, she's had all kinds of problem solving skills, and she and her husband are serving down in Nashville right now, and just the things that they learned working at Adventure Serve, they're using in their community, and that's what we hope happens at Asbury, and the same mission is what you guys are doing, which is great.
I think that's something you taught me well as far as managing staff. How do you manage staff in such a way that they, not just places are better than what you find it, but people are better than when you find it, and you move something on to them. Another higher education concept that I learned over at Asbury through you was service learning, and I think you even talked about it at like 3 different levels of volunteerism, and I don't know if you can extrapolate a little bit on that, and then I want to jump to something else.
Well, I think the principle there is that we want people to understand how to serve by itself, but also what are the concepts that make this work, and there's an understanding your context. So if I'm going to go serve in downtown Lexington, I had to know what that community is about, what the hard things are in that community. So what's the context of where I'm serving, so that I can have empathy so that I can do it in a way that's honoring to them, and I can do it effectively. So that is part of the learning part of if I'm going to serve somebody, I need to understand what the needs really are.
Yeah.
And in substandard housing and the things that you guys are working on, it's understanding the families that you're serving and the community that they're coming from and the culture and what their challenges are will help you come at that at a more effective way.
Yeah.
And
I think another thing around that, as I think about college students, and if college students or students in general are watching this, that there's a value in one-time volunteerism. And that entry point. For me, it's kind of like the scope of like car camping is okay, right? Or glamping as they call it.
Is that what you're doing here? Is this glamping? I do see a light, and I have a little bit of a heater.
I have actually this week a woman who had been homeless and now volunteers at the Jessamine County Homeless Coalition. She goes, "Oh man, I would have loved to have lived in this place."
Yeah.
This is and in talking around help about cardboard shanties in India, this, every person's situation is there's stages, right? But so volunteering one time is a good thing, but then the idea of maybe moving it to the next level of volunteerism, where every Thursday I'm going to go to the Salvation Army Center. And then maybe the next level of, I'm going to turn this into an internship. And I have been learning before in this service, but this is a more academic, because the internship is going to cause me to read some books to take this a little more serious, and kind of this phase of how to really get the best out of your service project. And I think what happens, and what we did a good bit through these experiences, learning how to debrief groups and discuss, this experience is powerful. To solidify this experience, we need to talk about it. We need to connect the dots to what we're learning.
You taught me a lot too. So the processing process of what, so what, now what, All right, what just happened? So what does that mean? Now what do I do with that?
Yes.
And the exposure to service is really important. That one time, it's kind of low, impact, or I'm taking my team and we're going to serve on a Saturday and that's the only thing I do. That's important. But then the little more extended, that I'm getting a little more uncomfortable. And then sometimes it turns into a vocation, which is so rewarding. We took groups down to Past Christiane when Katrina hit.
I remember that. I remember how hard that was to bring churches together, that every church kind of wanted their own name on it.
And that was hard stuff. And we took 80 students down 3 or 4 different times. But to see some students who got really excited and said, this is a passion. I may want to continue this. And to see them go and do that for a vocation, to work for AmeriCorps or to do it in other places. So that's what we hope happens. And that's what you're doing in Adventure Serve. You got staff that'll come and do it for a summer and it's great. And then they'll go do something else, or they'll get kind of turned on to this is the place that God wants me to serve for the next year, 5 years, 10 years.
And it's fun to just be with these young people that are at these crossroads of spending most of their life in education, learning, sitting under front, and they are just itching to apply themselves and to begin putting their teeth on stuff, and to see that happening and give them experiences where they're into that
and we continue to learn. You're doing something that 20 years ago you might not have thought you would be doing. I'm doing something that 30 years ago I might not have thought I'd be doing. But
I did.
We ought to all continue
Both
to learn.
Both of us are fundraisers, and that's a steep learning curve of how to build good relationships. And
it's finding people where their passions are and having them come along. So,
some would think that being in higher education, and you've held, the suit jobs, you're practically in a suit today underneath this coat, and you do the hobnobbing with important people and a professor at times, and that you personally haven't encountered friends or family or people in your neighborhoods who, is that true? Or speak a little bit about your understanding of the situation.
As far as substandard housing and what you guys are focusing on, we all have people in our lives who have challenges, and our family has had people who have been homeless, and so it's a hard thing for us, a heart thing.
Can't imagine if
and
it's
a
a
hard
family
thing.
member.
Yeah, family member, extended family members, multiple some have struggled with that, some are still struggling with that. So for us, it's real, and it helps you understand the complexity of it, helps you understand and really talk about and work through how do we help, what is the most effective way to help, and sometimes that's not as easy as it looks. And so, yeah, I mean, it's real for us in a variety of different ways, and we've got family members that I would let them tell their own story, so I won't go into a lot of detail with that, but we've walked through this with folks, both people we know and immediate family. So there's some challenges there that are real, that as a believer and as a Christian organization and as a family, Scripture says real religion is helping the widows and orphans and children in their plight. I mean, that's what we ought to be doing as a result of whatever role we have. I mean, we're in a community, whether it's a family or a community like Wilmore or others. And Wilmore's had people that have struggled with that we've stepped into helping. And
I imagine, having been at Asbury for a decade, there have even been students who just pinching to just get to the campus, but they had not really thought through, how am I going to regularly, how am I going to find good lodging or pay for it, or I left a situation from home or internationals. Is there some realities there? One
of the joys of my role now is I'm off campus a lot, talking with alums who are all over the country, literally, and to hear the stories from people who graduated 40 years ago, who just got on a bus and came to Wilmore, never having seen this place, didn't have enough money in their pocket, and to see people in this community, whether it was Leonard Fitch or whether it was a faculty member, just step up and say, you can come stay with me at the break, or all of a sudden their tuition was finished being paid for the semester and they thought they were going home. And
it's amazing how many students are anxious about, can I cover next semester?
Sure, and that's real for a lot of people, currently and in the past.
And one of your big deals with development is sponsorships. Is that correct? And
sponsorships, fundraising for scholarships, and so
I'm sorry, scholarships.
Scholarship, sponsorship, same thing. And we've got, there are Asbury, both the seminary and the college, the university has people who just love the mission of this place and this town, really, in a lot of ways. So there are people who want to make sure students are able to get the education they need, and it's not cheap, to educate. And so it's been a joy to see people stepping into that. And as we're in the middle of a campaign right now where people have really stepped up and increased the number of scholarships for students, and we have more international students than we've ever had in the history of the university come in, and other students who really can't afford it but are getting the help in different ways. And there's always way more than we'd like to help, which is a frustration for all of us. But
let's, there's such a data out there that tells us that education can combat generations of poverty. And how do we continue living out John Wesley Hughes' mission for Asbury University to educate the poor people of Appalachia? Isn't that something of the original passion that John Wesley Hughes had, the founder?
He wanted to help the poor. He wanted to get kids saved, sanctified, and ready for service. And that's 125 years later, that's still kind of where we are. Is people are coming, they need to know the Lord, they need to be transformed and ready to go out and do the same thing for others when they leave. And
love it.
That's You want to break that cycle.
Love it. Any final comments or something you want to make fun of me in my past or anything like that?
That door's too wide open. It would not be good to just walk through that door. But no, Andy, I love what you and your team have done. I've been proud of you and what you guys are trying to do in this community and in Eastern Kentucky and other areas. And I've seen the impact of your approach to that on my own child and on my own family, and I've seen students who you've taken under your wing and just done good development and brought people along, not even mentioning all the impact on the families that you guys have helped. So keep up the good work. It's just great ministry.
Means a great deal from someone who I would say is one of my greatest mentors.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm honored to be in the family of the Bachies.
Thanks for talking.
See you, buddy. Thank you.